can be bothered. What's your name?
My name's David. Yeah, I do. I think some good advice that I've taken away from this conference is just start someplace. Little pieces. And I'm interested in performance support because I think that smaller chunks that can be accessed real time and in need. What's your advice on that subject?
Let's go for Sarah. Thoughts?
I knew you were going to pick on me first. Okay, so your question is where do you start with performance support? I think probably the easiest place to start, I actually did a session earlier this week on digital publishing and converting things like job aids and that kind of stuff to ebooks. I think that you have the opportunity to make that available on devices, but a step further than that, with ebooks you can embed media, so you can add a lot more value than a job aid would. And with the pinch and zoom capabilities, you can do things like screenshots and you can blow them up so that you can actually see them, whereas maybe on a printout you might not have been able to. So I think that if you're going to start with performance support, start with things like digital publishing, start with things like video, just basic things that are going to be snips that help people. But I think before you even get into development, you have to figure out what are maybe your biggest pain points and try to get those first.
Terrific, thank you. And I'm going to ask Maybe Robert, if you'd like to add any further thoughts.
Go ugly early is, kind of the summary on that. Just try 5 things. Don't try to pick one thing. Look, as the panel suggests, we figure out a way to break down what our problems are. Pick 5 of the things that might make sense. Figure out a cheap and easy way to do that, and run them in parallel and get people's reaction to what's going on. Is this something that works, or was that something that works? I have a lot of people try to take the same piece of content or the same performance process and produce it 4 or 5 different ways, and try those on different groups and say which of these seem to be more effective or more accessible to you.
Terrific, thank you very much. So just to give you a bit of a background here, none of us sat in a dark room trying to dream up questions to ask the panel. We actually took your questions. Jeff sent out a tweet saying, what questions do you have? So we're going to go back to asking direct questions which came from you guys. And the next question is about to appear on your screen, and it's an anonymous quote. How can I bring my organization's old school mindset to the 21st century? Which kind of comes back to the question that we just heard from the floor. And I'm going to go straight to Michelle for this one.
Pilot. Pilot your mobile strategies. Start with something small. At Oracle, I'm in HR at Oracle, and we recently decided HR, we're going to try mobile. It was a big deal because despite the fact it's a technology company, the idea of a mobile thing for HR is just frightening. So what we did is we took the new hire, orientation, benefits, when do I get paid, how do I get my benefits, and when you have 10,000 new people starting every month, there are a lot of questions and not enough HR reps to do it. So what we did is we piloted a performance support app that is a companion piece to the e-learning everyone's forced to take to learn about all this. You don't pay attention to e-learning, click, 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 whatever. But now when you want to know when you're going to get paid, you just pop it up on your app. And we piloted it with a really small group of people, and it's worked. And we're iterating, we're changing, and we're rolling it out, and that is making a difference. People are seeing it. It's high visibility in the organization. People are seeing it, and it's changing minds. So we're hoping now we can take a lot more of our HR training, because we have a whole lot of HR training, and put it somehow or another, either with performance support or whole training pieces onto mobile device.
Great.
So pilot.
So pilot
and iterate.
Pilot. Terrific, thank you, Michelle. And Garen, what are your thoughts?
I agree with that, definitely. The one thing I would add is identify the change agents in your organization. There are specific people that talk to everybody. There are specific people that other people gravitate to. If you can identify who those people are and get them in on the pilot, then that effort has a much bigger impact. I think change in any organization is really challenging, especially in large organizations. So you need to identify those people who can influence the change. Sometimes, in some cases, it's just the top level management needs to come from there too. So you may need to get that kind of pilot in their hands and do something that really impresses them. And it's all about exposing them. As soon as any one of them saw an iPhone for the first time, they all wanted them. So you have to create something that they will want. And if they want it, they'll make it happen. So those are two other thoughts.
Terrific. Two great comments. Thank you very much. Our next question is from a quote by Steve Jobs. Design is not just what it looks and feels like. Design is how it works. True or false, Sarah? And why?
Well, you can't tell Steve Jobs he's wrong.
He's dead.
He's dead, it doesn't matter.
So I absolutely agree with that. And I think that there were a couple of really awesome sessions this week about affordances. And I think that when we're talking about design, one of the best places that we in the learning community can learn from or about design principles, I use TED Talks a lot. People who design book covers and print magazines, those types of folks, and to see what are those design principles, what are the web design principles. Those are the types of things that we need to think about when we're creating training, because there's this division where there are real graphic designers and then there are us learning folks that have been grown into this type of position where we have to be able to do these things. Well, we can apply these principles, but you have to skill up. You have to learn about what they are first. So I think that absolutely, if we don't understand design, then we are setting ourselves up for failure and setting up faulty projects.
Okay, let me just ask you a follow-up question to that, because absolutely design's so important, but how do you make that transition? If you're a trainer and all of a sudden you've been thrown into this because the boss said, hey, you're doing mobile, or you're actually learning, how do you gear up to understand the dimensions, the principles and so forth?
Right, so I have a couple of options that I think are really well received in organizations. I think one is working with a consultant. Work with a consultant that can help you start to learn those principles, that can help you through your first project and help you learn some of those skills. Another thing is coming to conferences like this. I mean, none of this stuff is rocket science, but you have to learn how to do it. We just don't have this knowledge imparted upon us one day and just because we have this new title. So you have to actually go out and learn how to use this stuff. And I mean, we're all mobile learning folks, we're all in this industry. We need to teach ourselves. And if we're not doing that, then we're not going to be able to teach anybody else. So use TED. Use lynda.com, use any of these resources that we have that are free on the internet right now that you can go out and skill up.
Thanks, Sarah. Robert?
It's a great question, and I think it's I think of Steve Jobs' biography and the way they did design, and they didn't do it with a user-centric approach. They didn't really ask what the community wanted, but they iterated the heck out of it, like Michelle said earlier. I mean, every Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, they sat in a lab and they held 57 versions of the shape of something that they were thinking about coming out with. So it's something that you don't want to have too many people involved in it. The horse designed by committee is a camel type of situation. But you really want to have a situation where the design, you don't rush it. It's hard to do this in mobile, not rush it to get it to market because it needs to be out there. But if you think about it enough and iterate enough on it, and it feels like what the user is looking for, then they should respond well to it.
Terrific. Thank you very much. Great comments. And actually, I'd like to also thank whoever it was that sent those questions or those questions and comments. Some came through Twitter, some people handed them to Jeff, and they've been really great comments, so we appreciate that. We're going back on the road to find out what questions are coming in from people who've been attending the conference. So let's go to the video cam. HTML5. What was it? Just keep going. What was that, Jeff? Overhyped. That's it. Yes. I just don't understand these people who speak in an accent. It's too much for me. My ears are the wrong shape, obviously. No, seriously. So I'd like to ask that question. Let's start with Gary. Is it overhyped?
HTML5, yes and no. HTML5 has been revolutionizing the technology area because it replaced Flash largely, as everybody knows. But in and of itself, it's just a vehicle. So it's kind of like saying, you know, we're really excited about a particular set of tires or something like that. Well, you're really excited about the tires or where you're going to go with the tires. And so HTML5 is very important to know. It's great because it's creating a standard that everybody can get behind. But I think the bigger question is, because it is a standard, what do I want to do with it and what can I do with it? So it is definitely something you have to pay attention to. I used to be a big proponent of Flash just because I really wanted Adobe to keep Flash back before they abandoned it because it had a lot going for it. But it's not about what you want, it's where the industry is going. So the sooner you get behind it, the happier you'll be about it. And then again, just what are you going to do with it is the bigger question, I think.
Terrific, thanks, Garen. Sarah?
Absolutely not. I don't think it's overhyped. I think we all need to know about it. I think that HTML5 is an awesome way for us to all finally program in one language. I mean, it just gives us this way to stop worrying about what device you're on and what platform you're on and give us just one way. For one, if I could just learn one way to be able to do something, that would make me very happy. So I love the fact that we have HTML5 now. I think that we overhype it sometimes in products and things like that. It's like, oh, this outputs to HTML5. Well, you need to get a good understanding of what that actually means. And what does that mean if you're doing that? Then what does that mean to your design? What does that mean to what you need to learn about it? It's not just it's just like what you said, it's not just a fancy thing, it's how we're going to get somewhere new. And so we definitely need to learn about it, and we need to be on board, but everything's overhyped. I mean, we have all the buzzwords, but we need to know about it.
Terrific, thank you very much. So, we move from HTML5 to our next video question, and let's roll the tape.
Question for you is, I've noticed that there's a lot of questions about QR codes, and I'm wondering if it's possible or if it's a good idea for me to wait on that technology and see if the RFID technology catches up or passes the QR code technology. In short, what do you think?
Okay, so QR codes versus RFID. What do you think?
I feel like that question was planted. I did a session here in 2 or 3 years ago on QR codes. So I was really excited about them then. And they've taken off in every other country, but it seems to have fallen pretty flat here. I was in marketing for a few years, just for the hell of it, and I gotta tell you, QR codes didn't work there either, because people are throwing them on billboards for you to take pictures of while you're driving. So I think QR codes are great, and I think they have their point. I think you can do a lot with them in event-focused things. I think maybe for learning, you could come with scavenger hunts and some other pretty obvious things. However, RFID, I can tell you nothing about that. But what I can tell you is that the near-field communications thing, the location-based, your phone going, hey, you're here. In marketing, everybody was really excited about NFC because you'd be able to walk into Macy's, and Macy's would suddenly pop up on your phone and say, welcome, here's 10% off coupon. So if you think of that in terms of performance support, somebody walks into especially I did some work for a glass manufacturing plant once, and I can imagine they could walk into a special section of the plant and say, here's how this particular computer program works to make the glass hot. And that's the kind of thing I think we need to look at for just-in-time delivery and things. So I don't think so much about RFID, because I don't know that much about it. But NFC, I think, is where we need to look.
Robert?
It's all just, different flavors of screwdriver in the bag, in my opinion. Each of them has a time and a place. I think that RFID had a lot of promise a few years ago, and it's really not the direction. I think participating sponsor Qualcomm is taking things like GPS and putting it down on a chip, and I think our phones are going to be more location aware to a higher to a higher resolution, or to a more finite resolution of the place that we may be standing. And that's going to be a way to access information, but it's not necessarily going to help me scan a code that says I want to attend this class or I need more information about that. So it's just is it Phillips or is it a regular screwdriver, big or small? Just all of those things are in the back.
Cool, terrific. Thank you very much. Okay, so what's next? Let's roll it out.
Mike Rocha. Mike, where are you from? Pennsylvania. Mike, what question do you have for the panel? In the future, will learning be from moocs?
And thank you for that cameo from Neil Lasher. MOOCs. So the question is, what's the values of MOOCs and so forth? Who wants to go for that? I'm going to ask if anyone would
I'll go.
volunteer. Thank you, Sarah.
I'll kill Mike later. So, MOOCs. I think okay, so I've actually participated in a MOOC, and I dropped off very early in it, and that's because I didn't see any, well, it was a little bit different, because when you go to school, you're done and you have a degree. And unless that MOOC format can start to give people something and show them how it's relevant and what they need right now, it falls by the same wayside that we see in universities. I don't know about you guys, but when I was in college, a lot of time I just spaced out through class because I didn't know how it applied to me at the time. But then when I was working on my master's, because I was going over content that I was actually applying while I was working at the same time, I paid more attention because it was relevant to what I was doing. So the way that MOOCs can be successful is by applying that principle. Do I think that it's going to replace everything? Man, I hope so, because college tuition is really expensive. But I don't know. I think that it has a lot of potential. Where it is right now, no, I don't think that. I think that there need to be adjustments made to how we make that immediately applicable to what folks are doing.
Terrific. Thank you, Sarah. And Garrett, I'm going to cut this down to 30 seconds. Have you got a response in 30 seconds?
It's not an area that I have a lot of experience in, so I'm just going to decline.
You're going to decline. There we go. I take that question with notice. Robert, you recorded 30 seconds worth?
I've participated in one, and it was on gamification, which I was interested in. 124,000 other people around the world attended that same class. But it's something that I'm passionate about, and I even developed for it, and I didn't finish it. But I did enjoy the first, 4 or 5 hours that I participated.
Interesting. Okay, let's move on to our next question. This question comes from Bill Brandon, and the question is, how will combined mobile, social, and video UGC affect the default approach to performance? And I'm thinking, Garen, you had the privilege of saying, I'm not going to talk about MOOCs. I'm going to pick this one up.
What's the video UGC?
So, user-generated content.
Right. Well, I think that's going to be critical. I mean, when you ask that question about what is the next generation tool or the most effective tool, and my response being that it bubbles, all the content bubbles up from beneath. I mean, I think that the intermediate step between that ultimate tool and the tool that we have today is the tool where everybody's creating content with intention. I mean, you look at YouTube, and it is sort of the de facto learning site. I go there at least a couple times a week to learn something. And it's all user-generated video. And so I think that it's going to radically change everything. I think it already is.
Michelle, what do you think?
I think I'm going back to my content strategy answer here. I think, and context for that matter. I can think of 2 examples off the top of my head where user-generated content really I've seen an effect. One, personally, I'm struggling through using Captivate at the moment. And I've gone out to the Adobe.tv, and they've got these wonderful people out there who work for Adobe just making little user-generated videos with their webcam at their desk that tell me how to use the product and that it's not as unintuitive as I think it is. So that's helpful for me. And that's just user-generated content getting me just-in-time information on what I need. Another one, and I'm actually going to reference Jeff on this. Back when he worked at T-Mobile, he did a thing where he had a lot of user-generated content brought out for all his users. It was almost like a competition. They brought things out. But what it did is it got the learners excited. They got to see other people in their organization, what they were doing with various devices. They learned a lot from each other. Some things that he said yesterday even went viral. So I think that's a really good example of how this kind of thing is going to generate excitement. When you're seeing, when you're learning from your peers, sometimes you get more excited when you're learning the expert at the top of the room.
Well done. See, had you not referenced Jeff, you wouldn't have pressed that button. You do know that, right?
I thought because you did.
All right, let's be we have one of you that's really long, and we're going to the last question.
And that is in fact the case. We are coming to the home stretch, and this is the question that each person is going to come back and give us an answer on. And the last question for the day is, what are we going to be talking about next year? What are we going to be talking about next year?
About? We're going to wrap it about next year?
That's right, yes.
Okay.
That's good. So what are we going to talk about this time next year? We'll start with Garrett, and I'm going to give you guys 45 seconds for this. Can we change our timing on this, Jeff? 45 seconds? 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Okay, this is the challenge. This time next year, what are we talking about?
Well, I think it's going to be a lot of the same, but what I think we're going to see a change in is just mobile as something different from everything else, because mobile is, in the end, just another delivery mechanism. And even though it's an exciting, and because it's mobile, it's changed the way we do things, we're going to stop talking, I think, we're going to stop talking as much about how mobile is different, because it will be the main thing. So whether or not that means eventually there's going to be mLearnCon and DevLearn is just one conference, I don't know, that's up to the conference organizers, but I see the convergence being where mobile's not so separate anymore, and it's just another thing that we have to plan for all the time.
Terrific. Thank you, Gary and Sarah.
I'm really concerned that what we might be talking about next year is where we're saving all this stuff and where we can find it again. So I would really say to everybody, it's great that we're talking about developing. Please start to think about your content strategy. I know Michelle brought it up a couple of times. Please start to think about where you're going to save this stuff, where you're going to keep it, where you're going to recall it, because this time next year it's going to be outdated. So you're going to have to go back and find it and update it most likely. So start to think about that now, so that next year we're not talking about where to find your materials, a session on that. So I think that it's really important for us to really think about where we're saving things, how are we going to get to it, so that we can update it when we need to, because we're going to be doing a lot of that.
Thanks, Sarah. Robert?
I would hope next year it's not 2/3 theory and 1/3 practice and case study, and it's the other way around. That more of the audience and more of the sessions, and this is what we did, and this is what we accomplished, and this is where we succeeded, and this is where we failed, as opposed to, wouldn't it be cool if we could ... I hope it's not all about Google Glass and Tin Can and just HTML5, for sure.
Thanks, Robert. Michelle?
Well, I'm actually going to. He mentioned Google Glass. It was on sale in December, I think, for $1,100. And I was at South by Southwest this year, and people just walking around with Google Glass. Makes you wonder what they're filming. But that's the thing. I think we're going to have new concerns with mobile. Mobile's moving into wearable. It's moving into very different kinds of things. Our learning is going to be available on our face, on our watch, on our phones. It doesn't really matter. Mobile's going to be everywhere. Learning's everywhere. And I think we need to start thinking about, talking about some of the concerns that will raise, the privacy concerns, the social policy concerns, and things like that. I think what we need to be talking about next year.
What a great privilege it is to have these guys on the stage. Thank you so much for your time. It's time for us to finish, but it's not over yet. Wink, wink. We'd like you to continue the conversation on Twitter, and of course, obviously continue the conversation in the coffee shops, the pubs, and so forth. But keep on the mLearnCon on Twitter. Tell us what you're thinking. Raise those questions and tap into all the thoughts, the ideas, the expertise, and the wisdom of the people already in this community. And as we do wrap, I think we've just got to say a few thank yous to a few people. First of all, we want to say thank you to our contestants. Truly, it's a great privilege to have you on the stage. They knew nothing what to expect. We really kind of wanted to make it edgy. We want to say thank you to the audience. You provided most of these questions. Thank you so much. I want to say thank you to our videographer, Robert, who went out there and took those shots and filmed the guys asking questions and filmed Neil tackling one of our questioners, which was good fun. Thank you for Robert. And at the end of the day, we've had a great time up here on stage having a chat and so forth, but I want you to give a thanks to our producer, our executive producer, and our writer, ladies and gentlemen, Jeff Tillett over here, without whom we would not have had this closing session. So thank you very much. That's it. Safe journey home, and see you next year.